Unboxing this mini pump for Schrader and Prest by West Biking. It has a maximum pressure of 100 psi. It surprised me of how small the package was. And as you can see here, it also has a tube attached to it, which allows you to not directly pump into the valve basically. You can mount it to the frame. Features: pocket size, convenient to carry and keep, emergency tool. And this is the main reason I got it, for convenience of keeping it, because I wanted to have it in my everyday backpack. So this is now what the bike pump looks like. It is, I would say, in between heavy and light. It is not surprisingly light, but also not surprisingly heavy, more on the heavier side. There are often bike pumps you can find that are completely made out of plastic. This isn't. This seems to be metal, as you also might be able to hear. Now, attached to this already is the mount for the bike, which is quite useful, and I actually didn't think about this when I got this, but it has a mount for the bike, and I even figured how do I then mount it to the bike with this here. Even though I probably might also keep it in my backpack. There is a difference between you having a bike pump on your bike and you having it in your backpack. In your backpack you have to carry it all day long, and it also weighs a lot more, but it also applies for bicycles which are not your own and you happen to ride. So when you have it just on your bike, then obviously you don't have it accessible if you're riding a different bike and you happen to have a flat tire. So for this reason I think this might be used by me, or it might not be. It seems to be kind of a rubberish band on this side, and the rest seems to be plastic. So this is here elastic and the rest is plastic. Conveniently, it also comes with this valve here, which you can use in order to inflate soccer balls or basketballs and things of that kind. These are all the things that came delivered with this. So in total we have the 2 screws. We also have this other valve, and I do not really know what this is for, but it probably also can be applied, as we might then test. Now in here now we find that you can't screw the top off, at least I think so. Probably not. And maybe just like this. Okay, now it opened up, and now what we find here is the tube. So it basically is similar to one of these Russian dolls you could find. And this already kind of makes it not that practical for using it all the time, because then you have to open this side here and then attach one side. Now obviously you need to attach the right side, and this seems to be the side that goes towards the bike, and this seems to be the side that goes in here. There is also a concept for smaller bike pumps available, where you have the bike pump and then you can press it down somewhere, because it actually has a certain frame that you can press down. So instead of pressing into the air and holding basically the pressure that pressures against yourself, you can then use it to pressure against the ground basically, which is useful. Now what you also could potentially do is use the other side and press it like this, which obviously is only possible if this still is connected to the bike, which probably is not very possible. So for this reason, it probably is a little bit harder to get pressure up here compared to a bike pump that actually has this mechanism where you can press into the ground, because the ground doesn't go away, whereas your hand obviously does go away. So for this reason, this is not optimal, and it also is not optimal because it has only Schrader and Prest valves, whereas it doesn't have Dunlop. And Dunlop would be the third one, which is the normal bike ventil, or not ventil, but again valve you could say. But I happen to have Schrader, and I needed urgently a bike that is not a bike, but a bike pump that is small and fits into my backpack, because at least in the past I kept it in my backpack and not on my bike itself. I also do not really exactly I haven't figured out yet whether I can actually attach it to my bike without the risk of being stolen too high, because in the city where I live, this might not be indicative of the city, but my bike light already with a similar attachment mechanism was stolen 2 times in a few months, so I don't know if this makes sense to attach it. I figured it would be at least this big, because bike pump I had in the past was also this big, and therefore I'm surprised. It is a little bit heavier because of the metal, but this also makes it, I guess, more durable. And again, this is made of plastic, this, and also the mechanism that holds it. The tube is made out of rubber, and then we again have metal here, and we have metal here. So this seems to be working rather fine. Now let's try the different attachments we have. Let's try this smaller valve, and this seems to be now going in here, ideally. no, this seems not to be the case, so it doesn't go in here. So for this reason, it might actually attach directly to down here, which then means you cannot use the tube for whenever you want to inflate. Okay, this also seems to not work. Or does it? No. So maybe there's a guide in there. There is not. So the valve that actually connects the tube to the pump itself is kind of a different valve, which now you might be able to see. So it's kind of a, again, plastic in there. I just figured this is maybe to blow up balloons. I am not exactly sure, but we can try to use this maybe first. But of course the other one doesn't then attach. So screwing that in seems to be not working properly. It actually does, or it does not. So there does seem to be a thread or ref also within this side of the tube, so maybe you should be able to attach it. There is no thread on the other side of the tube, and there is also no thread, I think, in here, apart from the bigger one. So it probably has to both fit in here. So now let's try this again. This is the valve for the ball pump, and it should fit in here. Maybe it is just the top layer of this thread. Yes, it is. So now I just figured it out, and you can fit it in here. It only screws in up to a few millimeters, and then it begins to be tighter and tighter. And I don't now know what this is for. Maybe it is for... No, we cannot attach it this way. So it is the same, seemingly the same size or thickness of the thread compared to the other one. I do not have... I mean, I could try this now, but I think it works. But I actually can try this instead of trying it on my bike, because that would be a way to go. So I have this ball, handball, you could call it. And apparently you also should call it, because it's the same name in English. So now we, first of all, attach the tube to the pump. Of course, you already have to take it out. So if you're counting the seconds, this is something you also need to account for. Then it probably makes sense to close this. And this probably here is maybe prone to breaking off at some point in the future, because it is just rubber. And this is not really ideal, I think. Especially if you then try, for example, to press this against the ground and to use it like this in order to basically speed up your pumping speed. So now we attach it like this. Of course, you kind of have to be careful not to hit anything on the other side of a ball like this. So therefore we just open it up a little bit, and now we attach it or insert it inside. And now let's just try what the pump is actually. Now, of course, this hangs down here. So ideally you would not have it hang down, because it puts too much pressure on the tube here. So now it seems to be working fairly well. There seems to be also a little bit of oil action going in here. This seems to be somewhat okay. This can be screwed off here. I don't know what happens if I actually totally screwed it off. You can take off this part here, and then you have basically a vent in here, and this seems to be what it is made out of. So we have two rubber bands. We have two rubber rings. In the middle we have plastic again, and then we have again plastic, and on the side is also plastic, which is not ideal, because this also could be something that is prone to breaking. Why? Because it is just plastic, and it needs to resist all the pressure you basically build up by pumping. So now let's try to pump this up. Now, of course, you can also detach this if you don't need this. So this seems to just clip. And now we have the bike pump itself. Of course, having something like this is handy, and it is not bigger than a pump you would just get for balls, for example. It is actually smaller, and because it is metal, it is probably also more durable. It is fairly easy to pump. I don't know if it is just the mechanism, or if it is just the fact that I'm used to pumping up a bike and not this, but it seems to work fairly fine. Now the ball already gets out air. Maybe it's not the newest anymore, but let's try to pump it up a little bit more. And as I'm pumping it up, I do also notice that this here, because it's rubber, probably after 2-3 years might also break. Especially since you hold it and you apply pressure to it. So now it just broke off, so this was not probably the valve itself, but me attaching it not properly. So therefore, let's just attach it again. Or let's just take it out. Not that it breaks, but okay. And it still isn't pumped up sufficiently. There also, it says I should wet the needle. Probably makes sense. And now let's try to pump it up till ideally the usage pressure inside is reached. And just like this, we pumped up this handball. It probably would have taken, if you already knew how to set up this, maybe a minute. And what you also obviously can do with the valve like this. And one problem could be that where do you put this here? If you have it in your backpack, I mean, do you put it also in here? Should you have it attached? So let's actually already try this out. What if we just detach the whole thing? We put this in here. Is there space for this? No. So the question is, where do you fit this? You have to have kind of a different bag. Ideally, this also would fit in here. And this is also the place where you usually find it on different bike pumps, at least the ones I had in the past. So that's not ideal. But let's see whether I can also attach this here. So there seems to be some problem with the printing or the making of this plastic thing, and I still am wondering what this might be for. It could be for air balloons. It still doesn't fit in properly, but it seems to be the same. As I said, it seems to be the same thickness. Oh, I also attached it to the wrong side. So maybe if we just screw off the top part. I mean, I don't want to break it, but now it seems to, no. Now it is screwed, but I'm screwed because it is kind of misplaced. There is also no instruction. There is also no link for a YouTube video where you could potentially watch it. So I don't know what this is for. And also, maybe I don't want to damage this any further. So maybe I will find out in the future what this is actually for. I just cannot think of any. Maybe it is for a different type of valve. And last but not least, we have these two screws, and these two screws are obviously for screwing it into your bike. This only works if your bike already either has holes for these or you just make them. Now on this side, what we have is no mechanism that actually would increase, or not increase, but distribute the pressure on here more evenly. I don't know what this is called, let's look it up. Washers. You don't have washers on here, but also the tips here are fairly broad, so this might not cause an issue. And that in total is this mini bike pump. I will then try it, and if it doesn't work, I probably make another video about it, complaining about it. But if it does work, and probably it does work, but just not as good as a bigger pump might work. But that's not the reason for this. The reason for this is that you have basically an emergency one, and also one that you can keep in your backpack at all times. A few weeks ago I had the idea of the backpack that is always packed. So ideally you want to have one backpack you take with you everywhere. You can also put your notebook in, and you also have maybe a set of underwear in. You also have a set of toiletry, so a small toiletry bag, so basically for brushing your teeth. And the idea behind this is to have an emergency backpack, which is simultaneously your ideal backpack. So you don't have to switch them, because if there is an emergency, let's face it, you probably will not have 2 hours to pack. Maybe you have, but it is probably better if it is already packed, then you can focus on something else. And for this reason, I recently got this backpack. I also had a kind of a bike set with also a small repair tool. So basically there are these boxes which you can use in order to then repair a bike tube if there is a hole in it, and I also used to keep something like this in there. Currently I'm not, because I wanted to go again a little bit lighter with this backpack. I also sometimes kept a replacement tube for one of these bikes, so basically a 28-inch tube just for my bike, and also with the kind of valve I ideally need. But the one part that was missing was one of these, and I also just figured out that maybe I can fit this in here on the other side. No, I cannot. And there is seemingly no mechanism where I can just insert this here. Maybe I just haven't figured this out yet. Maybe it does fit on the reverse in here. I mean, it could be. Let's just try it. Yeah, it does. Maybe it was already in there and I just didn't realize. So if you insert this like this, and then you put the one, so basically the end that attaches to the pump itself in here, and you cannot screw it on though, so this might be something that is prone to loss, then you can fit it all the way in, and then you just close it on here and it does close. So it seems to be a mechanism that was designed for this use, and maybe you can even fit this red thing in here, but I think you don't, because there is not enough space in here. In total, this bike pump was also only 12 euros, I think. On Amazon, it is sold by LEBEXY, at least in my country, which is Germany. It says LEBEXY mini bicycle pump, air pump, bicycle for Prest and Schrader, valves, high pressure. 100 PSI, I don't know what this translates to in terms of bars. So 100 pound per square inch, which is PSI, translates to 6.89 bars. I don't know if you can properly translate these two or convert these two into one in another. What I usually keep my bike tubes at is about 3 to 5 bars, I think. Now on 5 bars, I'm usually more prone to breaking the tube because I happen to hit it and then there is too much pressure and then a hole emerges. And if I keep it on the lower side, I obviously also am, my bike tube is also kind of prone to damage if it's only 2.5 bars. So it seems to be able to almost hit 7 bars. I don't know if there's a special mechanism in it. I had a lot of problems with these smaller ones in the past because I used them as my main bicycle pump, because I think it doesn't make sense to get one of these big ones, at least in the apartment I'm living in, or in the living situation I'm living in. It does not make sense. So therefore having something small like this, which also is ideally just a good tool and doesn't break after a few years. So it actually only was 10 euros on Amazon. A lot of these other ones were selling for 20, 25, and I think this therefore is a good value unless it breaks in the next days. And just a size comparison, this is my hand. I'm 182 centimeters, which is exactly 6 inch, you could say, and it's not even as big as my hand. Yeah, that's like this. Smaller than my hand, basically. Now in terms of fitting it onto your bike, there are these 2 screw holes on here, which are basically already meant for something to be attached, and it also seems to be the exact same distance. Unfortunately, these are filled now, and also if you think about it, if you attach these 2 like here, then the bike pump slightly stands out, which might mean you constantly are hitting it with your leg. I don't actually know what would be the best place for a bike pump like this, on a bike like this. Maybe down here, but at least I didn't plan to screw in any holes here, and therefore I might just not use it in the first time. I could attach it here, but as again mentioned, it doesn't make the most of any sense, because then as the bike pedal, the distance to the bike pedal here is only so small, I probably am hitting it all the time with my leg. So now let's try this in action. We take out this here, goes out, then I have to pay attention to what is left here, because it is now in here. Where did it go? Did it just stick in here? We had this different valve from before, and it is now just either in here, it doesn't come out, or I just don't know. Maybe it's gone. Maybe it's inside. Maybe I forgot it upside. Nevertheless, let's then attach this here. So we take, now it fell out. Oh yeah, I just didn't realize that it was here. So now we just attach this again. We take this end here, attach it inside here. Oh no, we attach it inside here. We screw it. It all feels also, apart from these rubberized things here, very sturdy. And then we take this side, which I just realized, is it even the right side? Yeah, it is, I think. Then at the bike itself, I take off the protection cap. And I ideally now can screw this on. And this was one of the main things I was looking forward to. And of course it now makes sense if you only have one hand. And in general, just screw this on before, I think. Did I make a mistake here? Is this Schrader is the one that is this here, I think. It's the one you also have on cars, but it just doesn't fit on here. Maybe you can attach this tube on two sides, and therefore you can attach this here, similar to how we attached the other valve, and now it seems to open. And of course air is flowing out here, so if I now make a mistake, I will have an empty tire without a bike pump. And I could attach it. And this is now one of the main advantages, I think, of this bike pump. It has a secure connection. Whereas on others, you are relying on you putting pressure down here, which usually is not a very optimized process. On here, what you have is a tube that attaches directly, and both ends are screwed on. So for this reason, you might not need as much pressure. And let's just try to film it like this. It is conveniently easy. And because you don't have to apply pressure just for the two valves basically to fit together, this might be probably one of the best investments in the last years, especially since it also is only so small. It also is made out of metal. Of course, I do not have a PSI meter or a pressure meter, which I otherwise could use, so I just use basically whatever I'm working with in terms of how easy it is to pressure this tire. So now it's still not enough. I just realized I can put it on the ground, and then you can see how it changes as we approach the maximum pressure. So now let's try this again. Still on the very low end of being pressurized. About 20 pumps later, of course, the pump wait is not that long, and therefore you have to pump a lot. But since you are not losing any air with every pump, you can also feel how filled the tire already is just based on your pumping experience. Whereas on these other ones, as you increase the pressure basically in the tire, you just have a lot more air that is actually flowing out, and you just don't know how much actually goes in. Now we are approaching probably about 3 bars, and it still flows comparably easy. Of course, you have to apply a little bit of pressure in between both of your hands, but it still seems to be somewhat manageable. Now it does get a little hot, as all of these pumps do get, due to the friction that is created in the pump itself by the air. Now I basically already have it at the pressure at which I wanted it to be, and this seems to be now fairly okay. The standard test, maybe a little bit more. As you can hear, it is still comparably easy. It does get harder, but this might be already where some people might not have enough strength, but I guess most people could still press this. Maybe 95% of people would be able to press this still. Now it is already quite firm, and I think I will leave it like that, because otherwise I might have too much pressure in my tire. Now for screwing it off, there is here this grid attached, which maybe allows you to detach it easier. And I just made the mistake of screwing off this part first, which obviously is dumb. So basically you want to still attach always the part of the valve first, which is obvious because the other part unlocks the valve at the bike tire. So therefore you need to find a way to kind of screw this on while rotating it properly, which you can conveniently. So there seems to be a mechanism in here which allows you to rotate the entire valve, and this mechanism is that the grip itself rotates basically and is able to rotate around the main part itself. So now I again apply pressure, now in a kind of different hand configuration. So now again we are approaching the ideal pressure, I think. And this time let's try to screw it off properly. Of course we have to rotate then the whole thing, but this is possible. So it's also something that somebody has thought about. Then not forget these caps as you screw them on again. Then you take the pump, you ideally unlock this. Then we again take this valve, fit it into one side. The one side it actually fits in, then fit this in here. No. Or is it? No, it does not fit in here. I just questioned the same thing I previously already did. So we open up this mechanism, this cap, then we can fit this in here. Now it fell out, similarly. Then we can close it again, and the only thing is left, marks. And I actually just realized, or saw here, that these are probably meant for something to fit on here, but there is no thread in. So what I would actually need, it does have a different size though, but this would be a place I can actually attach it. So maybe I attach it here, and then I use kind of a plastic thing to attach the other thing. I also saw that there are holes here and here, but there is no mechanism which I can fit it in. We also have a mechanism here and here, which would also make sense, I think, but the bike pump itself has obviously also to fit. It would maybe, no, it probably wouldn't. Or I can use this and this, which obviously is not for the bike pump, but meant for the thing you put on here. So conveniently it fits, and it also has a thread. On the other side, I just can use a cable binder in order to bind this, again, not again, but around this tube here. And then I very easily can fit it in here. Seems like it works. So only thing that needs to be done is the cable binder. In total, I mean, what more could you wish for? If it doesn't break, then it makes you stronger and especially brings more pressure into your bike tire. It looks almost too nice for it to be stolen, and therefore I might not put it on the bike, but I might leave this frame on the bike just for the case. Putting it on here just makes not a lot of sense. I could even attach it down here, because this is not that long. No, it doesn't fit because I have this here. The only question mark that is left is this here. I don't know what to do with this. At least till now, it was cheap, 10 euros. Without, I think I didn't pay shipping costs. It also is black, which is nice. It has the different valves, so you can also have this and pump up balls, like soccer balls. It did already come with a frame, even though I didn't expect it. It seems to be fairly durable. This is made out of metal, as well as the other parts inside are also made out of metal. And what can I say more?